trade that we used to do, the international world order, blah, 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 all this stuff done. No longer. We can never go back. We have to move forward and trade with China. Oh, really? Okay, that's what we have to do. So I think that it's bunk, and we're going to start with Secretary Bessent talking about that, I think, because he kind of laughs at Carney and says, listen, I was on the call. So, and with no readout yet from Carney other than denying that he said what he said. Carney's not a believable guy. I'm sorry, he's not. He's a slimy guy, and he seems slimy, and I don't trust him. Oops. What else? What was I talking about? Silver and gold. Silver and gold movements are absolutely nuts. Every Canadian politician has bad Trump derangement syndrome. GST grocery rebate is being absolutely lampooned. People are laughing hysterically at these people. And the rules-based trade is over with the U.S. So I already talked about that. So lots to get to. Let's get to it. First, here's Bessent, and he is talking about Carney. And he says, I don't know what Mark Carney's thinking. Maybe he should focus on Canadians and nothing else. But here is Bessent talking about all of this. Here we go.
Got a bit of a rift there lately, and there's different accounts between you and Prime Minister Mark Carney about that call this week post Davos with President Trump. He says that he dug in and reinforced the message. You said that he walked it back.
I was on the call. Prime Minister Carney, in my investment career, I've seen what happens when a technocrat tries to pivot and become a politician. It never really works out well. So I would just encourage Prime Minister Carney to do what he thinks is best for the Canadian people, not his own virtue signaling, because we do have a USMCA negotiation coming up, and he rose to power on an anti-American, anti-Trump message, and that's not a great place to be when you're negotiating with an economy that is multiple larger than you are and your biggest trading partner. In the end, I think we will end up in a good place. It may not be a straight line.
Are you saying that they will face consequences in these trade negotiations, reopening the USMCA?
I am saying that I would not pick a fight going into USMCA to score some cheap political points. Either you are working for your own political career or you're working for the Canadian people.
What about our own?
Right. It would be a bad idea to pick a fight with your biggest trading partner to score some cheap political points, and I don't think Bessent's wrong. And Sam Cooper says, Bessent asked about Carney digging in. Worth a quick listen if one cares about the controversy and framing of a potential election. So I don't see how Carney could say all this, the extortion crisis that's being declared in Surrey, BC, and movement towards China and Chinese EVs. How is this a re-election campaign when the last election campaign was, don't worry, I know how to get a deal with Trump. I can get a deal with Trump and make our economy go. And he hasn't done that. And so now we're supposed to believe that Canadians will line up to give Carney a majority based on this, based on the results from the last year. That's a record, people, and it's a bad one. And Carney's got to run on it, and people are telling me that he's going to get a majority. And listen, I know the elections are rigged. I get it. I understand the elections are rigged. I've been telling you that for years. But it's a very, very hard pill to swallow that Carney's going to go in and have an election with all of these scandals, all of these lies, all of these failures. This record is a failure record, and people are going to reward that. I don't see it, and I don't see people buying it. So what I think will happen is if they do try and force it, which they might, like Keir Starmer does things that the Brits don't like, but he is still in office, and that's true in other places, Australia as well. And so Carney may push this through, but then people just check out. They lose their legitimacy, and we're not going to do this. They need our permission. They need our cooperation. If they don't get that, then what happens is what happened after COVID. People stopped wearing the masks. They stopped listening to the health people. They stopped doing it. Was not a political solution to the COVID problem. We didn't elect somebody and they said, we are not going to do this anymore. We said, we're not effing well doing this anymore. And they couldn't force us, and they knew it. And so they backed down. So that's what I'm saying. They'll try, and Carney will stay in power, and they'll threaten to they'll make different arguments about why it's important to ban speech, and they can't do it because we won't comply. I won't comply, and it will be hard for them to put somebody like me in jail. You understand? Even like Jeremy McKenzie, even though they've demonized him, and I don't think that he's a bad guy. I don't think that what he says is a bad thing. The rape joke was a little bit far, but bygones. It's one of those things that even somebody who says something that the government thinks is horrible, still, they're going to have a hard time locking that person up. Even though the Coots guys just got out yesterday, they're going to have a hard time doing that. They would have a hard time throwing Tamara Lich in jail. So they lose, and they know they lose because we're not on their side. And so they're trying for censorship. We don't give them permission. They can't move forward. So it will be an arrested development. They will continue with stealing from us, but they won't make meaningful progress towards their goal, especially with Trump there. And so it's a stalemate. That's what I think. That's what I think is going to happen. So Inside Paper says, breaking. This is the third time this week I've seen the same breaking news. Rules-based trade with the United States is over, Canada's central bank head says. I guess the news is now somebody else is saying it. But this is just another globalist asset placed in a position to say things at the opportune time to get these kind of headlines. They're trying to tank Trump. They're trying to tank Trump because Trump is removing their fake fiat system that they had full control over, and he's returning it to a real monetary system that nobody has control over, that is just supply and demand based. And that's why you're seeing silver go up, and it's going to go up more. It's going up to $300 to $500 an ounce. I think that's where it's going to sit if gold sits at $5,000 to $7,000 an ounce. And so that's where, and like, that's not me. That's like smart financial people who were talking about that. I can't remember the name, but one of the silver guys, maybe the AI Asian guy, silver guy. So that's why they're trying to tank Trump. And that's what Trump's doing to counter it. He's saying, okay, well, if you are going to do this, I'm just going to remove your power to run the fiat system. Food Professor says, so in response to rules-based trade with the United States is over, according to the central bank head. The Food Professor says, hey guys, our agri-food sector depends on the USMCA. So seeing our prime minister pick a fight with the United States is making many in the food industry deeply uneasy. Do you think that the government, they're more likely to do something like this than squelch our free speech outright? They're more likely to destroy the USMCA because they have a little bit more power over that. And it seems like they're trying to squelch the USMCA. But I don't think that they'll be able to, because if that happens, they lose power. Because I don't think people who have depended and worked with the United States for 30 years will suddenly say, oh yeah, I hate the United States, elbows up. Like, if your customer has been the same place for 30 years, those people, it's like your family almost. And having a situation where you can't trade anymore because of a stupid politician doing stupid things seemingly against the interest of the Canadian people, that's not going to last. People aren't going to accept that. They're not going to reward that with a majority. It doesn't make any sense to me. And so they're kind of screwed. They can't actually squelch this deal. Doesn't mean they're not going to try. But Food Professor's pointing out they're going to have a hard time with it. I think this is interesting. This is in trade, but I just the conservatives aren't responding to the fast-moving political situation that we're in. It is clear, like Minneapolis shows that it's clear that what's going on is very different than what it seems like is going on. The conservatives don't want to talk about that. They want to do politics like it's 2023, like we're supposed to not know about any of the fraud, the infiltration of Marxist-funded NGO Marxist-funded people into positions of power, the signal chats, all of those things. We're supposed to not know about any of that. That's not even really happening. And so these guys are doing politics as usual, and I wonder what the hell the plan is. If I was sitting in a position, Andrew Lawton or Matt Strauss, these guys join the Conservative Party to make a difference, to fix things for Canada, and get in there and get their hands dirty and actually participate in the political process. Andrew Lawton was a journalist, but I can't help but look at this and say the Conservatives hit Andrew Scheer to pass the Liberal budget, and then they pretend to fight on Twitter, but really in the House of Commons they're passing the things that the Liberals want. And so, like, what's the plan, guys? Because if the plan is we're gonna put votes up that fail every time, and we're never gonna go to an election, and if we do go to an election, oh yeah, Mark Carney's gonna win a majority, so we're better to stay in the configuration we're in. These guys are going to lose because the party's a loser party right now, unfortunately. But I want people to understand what's going on and what has happened. Nobody's been held accountable for COVID. Nobody's been held accountable for the misuse of the government. Nobody's been held accountable for what they did. And they're still pretending that, oh yeah, just, forget about the fraud. Nothing like that's happening here in Canada. Bullshit. Matt Strauss says, today Mark Carney voted against the Canadian Sovereignty Act. The act would have unleashed major projects by repealing liberal barriers. It would have rewarded Canadians who invest and build at home. Please ask the liberals in your life what on earth they were thinking. They're communists, and they're trying to tank our economy and Donald Trump's economy too. They're making deals with India. Apparently, we're going to have a pipeline to Tidewater, and we're going to sell to India, which is better than not. We could sell to India. We could sell to all Europe. We could sell to Japan. We could sell to everybody and their dog. Twin the pipeline, triple the pipeline, right? Make it as big as possible. Sell all the LNG and oil to India and whoever, but also sell it to the United States. What they're doing is not helping Canada, but they're trying to use Canada as a something to harm Donald Trump, and I find that very interesting. And a lot of Canadians agree, and they've been so brainwashed, it's not even funny. Like, all of the people who are defending fraud in Minneapolis, Minnesota, are the equivalent of Canadian anti-Trumpers. I look at them and I think to myself, he's not even the person running your country. Why don't you care about all the fraud that's happening in our country? Why don't you care? Why don't you care about Carney tanking our economy? Why don't you care about Carney souring a trade deal that has been a very long-standing trade deal and is beneficial for both sides? Why? Why doesn't anybody care? They care about Trump being mean in Minneapolis, getting rid of illegals who don't deserve to be there anyway? What? And who are criminals? What? Have you seen the Somali fraud? They're pirates. Like, holy smoke. And I don't mean Jack Sparrow pirates, but kind of. Anne says, pay attention. Let's talk about finance. I wanted to get here before the end of the show, so I'm glad we did. I want to get to the Trump stuff, but we're not going to get to the Trump stuff. I've got all sorts of... So CTV is so crazy. They're putting anti-Trump text on stories that don't have anything to do with Trump. It says Trump is taking direct aim at Canadian workers, according to Ford. And they put all these anti-Trump messages up on this thing that has nothing to do with Trump.
Clause study of Bill C-9 to focus on getting the bail.
All so crazy. And then you've got Don Davies, the leader of the NDP. You've got Nenshi, the Alberta NDP leader. You've got the premier of New Brunswick. All unbelievable Trump derangement syndrome, just losing their mind about Trump. And they have nothing at all to say about what's going on in Canada. They're a part of it. They're complicit in it. They're trying to help the Marxists with what they're doing in Canada. That's why. They're all talking from the same script. It's wild. It's absolutely incredible. So we're going to talk about that after the free show today. But Anne is talking about silver and gold are Trump's protection against the fiat currency being tanked. They're trying to tank the economy and hang that around Trump. They're trying to say what he did is wrong. Tariffs are wrong. You can't do that kind of stuff. It's going to tank your economy. And it's not, but they're trying to do that. And Trump's response is, hey, watch the silver price, everybody. Watch the price of gold, because that's real money. And constitutionally, the only real money is silver and gold. So it's Christmas all over again. Anne says, pay attention. The financial reset, is in progress. What just happened almost never happens. 3 once in a 500 million market events in a single week. Bonds snapping, silver going wild, gold ripping higher. The international banking cartel's plumbing is breaking under pressure. This is how resets actually start. Stress exposing the over-leveraged and lack of trust. All this telling you something is wrong with the money itself, maybe because it's fiat, fake, backed by nothing. So yes, this looks like the reset phase beginning to unfold in real time. It's going to be a bumpy ride. So No Limit is going through this a little bit, and I think it's worth knowing. I think it's worth talking about. So the impossible just happened, they say. The probability of what's happening is near zero. 3 Six Sigma events occurred in 1 week: bonds, silver, and gold. We are currently living through statistical impossibility. Let me explain. Last Tuesday, Japanese 30-year debt recorded was what's called a 6 Sigma session. 2 days ago, silver did even better. It was a 5 Sigma on the rally, then reached 6 Sigma on the drop in a single session. Gold right now, it's up 23% in less than a month. We're getting very close to a 6 Sigma event with gold as well. That's 3 Six Sigmas in 1 week. To explain quickly, in finance, we measure the price moves around on an average using the standard deviation, which we call a sigma. 1 sigma is mundane, 2 sigma is common, 3 sigma becomes rare. 4 sigma is exceptional, 5 sigma is extremely rare, 6 sigma is supposed to occur once in 500 million. Here are the 6 sigma type episodes we saw previously. October 1987 crash, 22% drop in one session. March 2020 COVID crash. The Swiss franc surge in January 2015. WTI oil turning negative in April 2020. But we've never had 3 events occur in 1 week. Do you see the point? A 6 sigma event is almost never triggered by a simple macro headline. It almost always comes from the market structure, leverage, positions that are too concentrated, margin calls, collateral problems, and forced selling or buying. That's important to understand because we're talking about internal strains on the system's mechanics. As you know, the Japanese bond market sits at the head of the global financial system, and I won't go back over the whole topic, but a 6 sigma move in a market that enormous doesn't go unnoticed. Seeing 6 sigma moves in silver a few days later gives one a lot to think about. And now gold? That's insane. Why are we seeing extreme statistical events only days apart in such different markets? When a pillar of global funding becomes unstable, leverage tends to contract. The two things happen at the same time, forced selling in certain assets and forced buying of protection in others. Historically, precious metals are often among the beneficiaries. Long-term rates say something about the credibility of states, that is, their ability to honor future debts without resorting massively to inflation. Precious metals say something about the credibility of the currency itself, and when both become unstable at the same time, we're looking at a challenge to the monetary framework. I won't go on because I want to share the rest in another tweet tomorrow, but generally when a regime starts to crack, the adjustments are brutal. It's exactly in those moments that several high sigma events appear across different classes. I'll repeat it. Seeing 3 6 sigma events back to back is not normal. Gold and silver are telling you explicitly that we're living through a real paradigm shift. Remember, I've called every market top and bottom the last 10 years, blah, 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 blah. So interesting. And same thing. FX Hedge says gold is $5,600 per ounce, up $600 per ounce since Friday. And we're supposed to act like there's nothing wrong right now. Silver is at $120 per ounce, up $20 since it reached $100 for the first time last Friday. So buckle up, everybody. We're riding the Sigma 6 roller coaster, and there's no brakes. So, yeehaw. Here is Juno News, and they're reporting the PBO says the government is stretching the definition of capital to include tax credits and subsidies. No other advanced economy counts as capital. And these guys talk back and forth, and basically, I can't remember his name right now, but the head of Jason Jack. He's right there. He's saying we should probably not do this. So I'll just play the last 20 seconds because he sums it up. He says, this is a bad idea. We should probably do what other countries are doing.
Shares those concerns, which is why the International Monetary Fund, similar to ourselves, we highlighted in October and in November, International Monetary Fund, several months later, but highlighting the same issue that potentially be worthwhile to learn from other jurisdictions and use a consistent definition that other people use.
Yeah. So Canada is, we're not doing so hot with the whole money thing, and we got rid of all of our gold a while ago. We sold it at the bottom and we just sold the gold mine, but don't worry, the gold mine was in Africa physically, so I think all gold mines that we have in Canada that are physically in Canada, we still own, probably, or at least China doesn't own them. Maybe the United States owns them. But Mr. Sunshine Baby is highlighting Tiff Macklem, and he says Canada's central bank governor confirms that Trump's tariffs on Canada are working. U.S. tariffs are throttling Canadian exports and business investments. Jobs remain weak, youth unemployment is high, and growth is sluggish. Canada is losing. So everybody who said we can win this, we can put pressure on the United States. Don't worry, everything's fine, and we'll do everything, to put pressure on the United States, and we're going to win. Well, I said then, and I'll reiterate now, you don't win a trade war against an economy 10 times your size. You just don't. It would be like Texas going into a trade war against the United States. Like, it just doesn't make sense. You lose bigly. Here's Tiff Macklem.
Tariffs and uncertainty continue to disrupt the Canadian economy. After a strong third quarter, economic growth likely stalled in the fourth quarter. Exports continue to be buffeted by U.S. tariffs, while domestic demand appears to be picking up. Household spending is expected to continue growing moderately, supported by past cuts in interest rates and rising disposable incomes. U.S. tariffs and related uncertainty have held back business investment, but we expect some modest strengthening in investment as businesses adjust to the new trade environment and governments increase infrastructure spending. The impact of U.S. tariffs can also be seen in the labor market. Employment weakened in the first half of 2025 as sectors hit hard by U.S. tariffs cut production and jobs. In recent months, overall employment has risen, led by hiring in services like healthcare. At the same time, slowing population growth is reducing the number of new entrants into the labor market. Still, the unemployment rate remains high at 6.8%. Youth unemployment is particularly elevated, and relatively few businesses say they plan to hire more workers in coming months. Overall, economic growth is expected to pick up gradually. The Bank of Canada projects.
They've been saying that for years. They've been saying, oh yeah, things are going to turn around 2023 or 24, and then in 23 or 24, 25 or 26. Okay, well, it's going to pick up soon. Yeah, it's going to pick up soon. I don't believe them generally. So it's one of those things. Shazzy says Bank of Canada says growth stalled, unemployment 6.8. Particularly elevated youth unemployment, and so very low growth forecast in 2026. That's not a recovery. That's an economy treading water while a generation waits for jobs. So yeah, it's not great. And Shazzy says the solution, Canada's solution to unaffordable groceries, cut a one-time GST check and call it help. People aren't stupid. They know this buys a few weeks of food, not a future. Food inflation here is double the United States, even with their tariffs. Too little compensation, too much regulation, and a government that keeps handing out checks will keep prices rising. Band-aid economics don't fix broken systems. Yeah, if you are cutting checks, the government is cutting checks, that's printing money essentially, and putting more money into the economy, chasing the same number of goods, all that does is cause inflation. It's not good, it's bad, and they know that what they're doing is actually a negative, net negative, instead of a net positive. Trolling Canucks says, when a government has to hand out grocery rebates to help people eat, that's proof of failure, not compassion. Yes, it is a failure. Food Professor says, happy for the 12 million Canadians getting more GST credit to help make ends meet. The expanded program will cost nearly $12 billion, money that was not in the federal budget. How many reporters asked Carney how Canadians will pay for it? 0. So of course they didn't ask. CTV News says, listen, communism's great. This is how the new GST rebate works. So some people pay more taxes than other people because communism. That's basically it. GST credit explained who gets it, how much, and what's under the credit boost. So it just seems ripe for fraud. Absolute fraud everywhere. National Post says weak leadership and lax immigration policy is tearing the fabric of Canadian society. The result is not diversity within a cohesive nation, but fragmentation within a weakening one. Yeah, we've lost a lot. I think it's nearly unmeasurable what we've lost. The Canada that I grew up in I don't think I can visit that place anymore. It doesn't exist, and that's unfortunate. And I try and recreate what I can for my kids, but it's difficult. Andrew Lawton is highlighting the Liberals refuse to say whether they will accept the Federal Court of Appeals ruling that found their use of the Emergencies Act was illegal and unconstitutional. So they're not going to accept. They're not going to accept this. And I want to get something in before I go, otherwise I would play this. But the Liberals are their typical tap dancing selves. They talk about what they want to talk about. They don't actually talk about things that are important. The Remanded is highlighting this, and we got a bit of a win for him, so that's good. I want to highlight the BC election investigation is ongoing, and they've done everything they can to stymie him, but people have been able to step up and fund this, and things are moving forward. So Remanded says, last night, BC elections updates January 28th. On December 4th, I submitted a Freedom of Information request for copies of all tabulator tapes and ballot accounts. Election BC's privacy officer denied my request, which I believe violates Section 275 of the BC Elections Act, and these documents are public records available for inspection. See image referencing the section of the Act. One might ask, why the resistance to obtaining election material? We have an active lawsuit before the BC Supreme Court. Please consider helping with future legal costs. Linked in the comments below. We keep going. And then here is the win. He says, great news. Remanded again says, great news. The OIPC has decided that the Freedom of Information before them will pass the review phase and continue to be investigated. That means that the plain and obvious dismissal request by Elections BC CEO will be denied. So we keep going, he says. Good. And 15, this is the last thing. Ben says, wild statement from a mayor of a Canadian city. We need to get a grip on this extortion crisis. Again, I can't see how Carney wins a re-election after out of control crime, no fixes for anything, promises broken, major promises broken. Oh, I'll get a deal with Mr. Trump, he says. Bullshit, because he didn't. And so, oh yeah, we'll re-elect that failure. In Canada, we love failures, but especially liberal failures. Wild statement from a mayor of a Canadian city. We need to get a grip on this extortion crisis. Maybe first let's overhaul the refugee system to not give out to the people responsible and prevent them from delaying deportation. 15 extortion suspects are seeking refugee status, says Canada's border agency. Yep, and the office of the mayor says, I'm urging the federal government to take full leadership and declare a national state of emergency or invoke the equivalent extraordinary measures to tackle the extortion crisis affecting communities across Canada. Surrey is facing a serious and growing crisis of organized extortion, intimidation, and targeted shootings. Residents and business owners are living in constant fear, and public safety is at risk. Despite police and provincial efforts, these crimes are not stopping. Surrey is entering the third year of this crisis, and we need a full-scale national response. The federal government must act now to give the authorities the additional tools necessary needed to protect our community and restore public safety. So, not great. Not great. That's Carney's re-election campaign, by the way. But will Pierre hang that around his neck? Who knows? Who knows? With that, I've got to say goodbye to the stream. I went a little long there, but it's worth it. I wanted to highlight the remanded stuff. That guy works like harder than most people, and it's a thankless job, and I hope he's successful, because if anybody deserves it, that guy deserves it.